Welcome to the Sorcery Podcast, your sacred space to delve into spiritual tools, topics, and practices that will illuminate your path of soul remembering and healing. I'm your host, Ligia Costa, a soul guide, alchemist, soul writing coach, and the creator of the Trust Pathway. I'm deeply grateful to have you here with me. Together, we'll embark on a profound exploration of self-discovery and healing, unlocking the secrets that lie within. Olá everyone, I'm Ligia and I was born and raised in the beautiful Portuguese capital of Lisbon in the 1980s. Today I would like to talk to you about how I came to be in this journey of self-healing and self-discovery. So I'll be a bit vulnerable. Some of my story comes from childhood struggles that then led me to my spiritual awakening and finding my soul's calling. So, as a child, I discovered solace in books, in drawing fantasy characters, in writing poetry. I used to write a lot of poetry, but these were like creative outlets that helped me escape from an abusive childhood and also from bullying at school. So my yearning to actually speak up my truth and inspire others was always present through the art that I created, through the words in the poetry, and even through a lifelong dream that I had of becoming a reporter, becoming a journalist for a famous Portuguese newspaper. Life took me in another direction, but the dream was there. So, despite being very, very academic as a child and having this dream to, go to uni and then finding possibly a job in a gazette first and then moving up the ladder in the news industry and using my words in a way of, not only expressing myself, and I know that as journalists we are not meant to be very opinionated, but to bring truth to the light, to reveal truths and things like that. Despite all of that, I made a life-changing decision, which at the time was absolutely led by my intuition. So I dropped out of school and moved to the UK to be with my soulmate, with my boyfriend of only months. But at the time, he was living and working in the UK, despite being Portuguese. And I decided to move to the UK to be with him. And little did I know that this journey would shape my future in unexpected ways. For starters, life took an unexpected turn when I experienced the pain of losing a child due to an ectopic pregnancy. I was living in the UK for a year or two. We just got married and it was our first pregnancy. We really wanted the baby. We were trying for the baby for a few months and we were so extremely happy. But then what I actually got was an ectopic pregnancy. At the time, I didn't even know what that was. And so the trauma and isolation of, dealing with this loss so far away from our family and our friends actually led to a decade-long battle with chronic depression and anxiety. And in the years to come, I then realized that I needed to seek help and take responsibility for my healing. But it took a while to get there. It wasn't that quick. It was a journey. So then I got pregnant again with my firstborn, and I was a very clingy mother because I was so scared to losing this baby that I didn't like people to hold the baby or take them away from my side. And I think also the fact that it was just the two of us, me and my husband, living in the UK without like sharing our lives with anybody, and then becoming a mother on my own without the support system of, my own mother or my mother-in-law or friends for that matter. Yeah, I think I became overly protective of my child, but I was extremely happy. And then I got pregnant again with my secondborn, and that's when I think, well, I'm sure I got absolutely triggered, because it wasn't in our plans to get pregnant so close to each other. So my eldest just turned 2 when I gave birth to my secondborn. So they were very close in age, and although we wanted a second child, it wasn't in the plans to have it so close. And without me realizing at the time, the fact that I got pregnant with a second child brought me a lot of trauma back into my consciousness. Obviously, things that I felt, but then I learned how to cope with. But because at the time I was the eldest and things changed after my mother had my sister, so unconsciously I started to get really scared of, doing the same thing, of, loving one child more than the other, and neglecting my eldest, not being there for him, becoming a version of my mother, and continuing this cycle of pain and trauma to my children, which I didn't want to. And so that's when a lot of my childhood trauma came to light on an unconscious level. And what happened was that I got postnatal depression and anxiety, which came from the depression. And at some point when my middle one, well, at the time was my youngest, was 2, I started to see a therapist. I got the courage to seek help, and actually therapy became a catalyst for my own healing journey. As we unpeeled these core wounds, these limited beliefs, these traumatic experience from my own childhood, I started to find new motivation. I started to heal, like slowly, but on a level that I could understand why things were unfolding the way they were, why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And that sparkled a lot of curiosity in me. And I started to study psychology and emotional trauma, and also seeking a lot of deeper understanding of myself. And this expansion of knowledge allowed me to actually reclaim my creativity, the creativity I've always had as a child, and then with life unfolding the way it was, and then the depression, I lost the connection and the motivation to be creative. And that also sparkled the idea of me embarking on a path of entrepreneurship, which I never thought I would. Yeah, that's when I started my own business. That started a long time ago, and it's been, again, a journey. It started with me painting gift boxes and decoupaging gift boxes and trinkets, and then It evolved to sewing accessories and then evolved to actually creating stationery with my own hand-drawn characters and icons and things like that. So yeah, it's been a journey in both entrepreneurship and learning everything to do with business, which is not easy, especially when we are multi-passionate and creative, and the only thing that we really want to do is to express ourselves and connect with people and make other people's lives more joyful through our creativity, but then having to learn everything to do with entrepreneurship. So with all the life, the changes that go so quickly in the world. So yeah, it's been a journey. And once I've heard that there isn't a way of doing self-work or self-development as much as being an entrepreneur, because we have to work so much in ourselves, in our own confidence, our own fear of visibility, of speaking out, trying new things, the feeling of being rejected when we don't sell something. So all of these things, actually, it's working on ourselves. So yeah, once I've heard that, and it's so spot on. So jumping a little bit now to why I started to work with, spirituality. The thing that I haven't actually mentioned is that because I was very sensitive as a child, going through the childhood abuse and always being on the flight, fight, or freeze response, being on alert all the time, it made me very empathic. So I always knew where the energy around me wasn't great, especially around my mum. And since I was very young, I had premonitions through my dreams. I would dream something and things would happen. And it would be like silly things, like I remember this one dream I had of a friend, a school friend. And I dreamed that we were like at the front of the school gate, gathering together like we always did before we went to class. And she arrived on the bus and she had this kind of bob haircut. And at the time she had long hair. I don't know why I dreamt about that, but the thing is, the very next day she showed up with the same haircut that I saw in my dream. And I told her like, oh my gosh, I had this dream yesterday or last night with you having this same haircut. And that same happened with like other friends and clothes they would wear. So it would be like these silly things, but also more serious things. Like I had this dream about a baby, like me having a baby. And then when I read about it, it said that the meaning of dreaming with a baby is actually related to someone in the family getting ill. And a week later, my dad had to go to hospital with what was the first signs of prostate. But at the time, we didn't know. He was bleeding and he had to go to the hospital. So these things would happen frequently, and I started to shut them down because I started to get scared, and also I didn't want other people to know about it, because when I was in secondary school, being called a witch wasn't a compliment. It was actually rude and was like spotlighting someone that it was weird, that person was weird. And I was already bullied at school, so I didn't want to bring even more attention to me. So I started to shut that down. But back in 2018, after going through almost a decade already of depression and anxiety, I had this dream with my granddad. At the time he was in hospital, to be fair, with cancer. And we knew that sooner or later would be his time to transition. But I was very, very close to him, very attached to him. So, that thought really scared me. But there was this one night that my grandma came into a dream, and she, in her way, she showed me that was going to transition soon, and that she will be there waiting for him. She will be there for him at that time. And I instantly knew that would happen. And I woke up crying, and I told my husband, like, I had this dream of my granddad, he's going to pass away soon. And truth be told, a week later he did. But I think, this premonition, and with all the premonitions that I have that involves family members, is not really about me knowing their future, knowing what's going to happen and alerting them about what is going to happen. It's actually more to do with my spiritual guides, or in my case was my grandma, so a past loved one, of consoling me, of preparing me to what is going to happen, to be there to support me through something that will happen and that will shatter my world. So it's not so much about me being a bearer of bad news. It's a lot more to do with me being prepared on a personal level to something that will rock my world. And this dream I had back in 2018 with my granddad actually was the event per se that brought all these memories from these capabilities that I had from my childhood and that I had shut down. And so I started to embrace my intuition, to spare more time studying and learning and actually connecting with spirit and with the power of dreams. I started to open up to these gifts that I had forgotten. And then the pandemic happened in 2020, so with all of us locked down and the world stopped, and I actually had time finally to dedicate myself to explore this, to study, to make time for meditating and for spiritual practices, also to do the deep inner work. And that's how my spiritual awakening happened. That was in 2018, and then over the 3 years that followed, things started to open up, and in a way preparing for what was to come. Because as I said, I have like premonitions with dreams, and in 2021 I had this dream around April, June, about me visiting my dad in Portugal. And when I got there, no one was at home. And then I walked up the street, and it's not even like somewhere that he was living. I don't recognize that street at all. And I don't think that is the important part here. The thing was like me going to visit her home. No one was at home. And then I walked up the street, and what I saw was these wooden chairs lined up across the street. And then at the front of those chairs, there was a coffin with flowers, and I saw some family members there. Everyone was wearing black. I saw my dad's partner there. She was crying. And I knew, it's that inner knowing. So I knew that was my dad inside the coffin. And I remember being very, very upset because no one told me that he had passed on. And it was his funeral, and it just happened that I went to visit him in Portugal, and it was on the same day of his funeral. But I remember this, and I remember waking up really shaken up. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. And I think a part of me shut that down. My dad was dealing with cancer at the time. He just got the news back then that he had cancer. And, there is this belief in Portugal that if you dream with someone dying and that person is still alive, that you're actually giving more years for that person to live. It's not really that you are predicting their death. So I kind of cling on to this belief, thinking, okay, that's fine. Like, this just means that he's going to overcome cancer and he still has lots of years with us. So I didn't even discuss that with anybody. And I think a part of me just shut that down and kind of forgot about this dream. And as I said, this was in April, June time. And in October, early October that same year, I was in my office working and I got a phone call from my godmother. And she gave me the news that my dad passed away. And not from cancer, but from a car accident. This loss has been the hardest loss of my life. It's been almost 2 years and the grief, it's unbearable still. But the realization a month or so later of his passing, when my dad showed up in a dream, and he told me in a very kind voice, "You knew." And then kind of as a flashback, so it was like I was having a dream inside a dream. So in a flashback, whilst I was dreaming, I remembered that dream I had back in April about the chairs on the street and the coffin on the street. So that was like a representation of how he was going to die in a car accident. But I will never make that connection before that. But how it just like a month or so after his passing, he showed me this dream again. And he told me very kindly, "You knew," as in like, deep down you knew this was going to happen. It's like my spirit guides tried to prepare me, protect me. But I shut that down, it's just that free will, isn't it? We can have all the clues, all the help, all the guidance from spirit and from the universe and our spirit guides, but it depends on us. And at the time I just locked it down. And it's been very, very revealing. Not only this grief that led me to Dark Night of the Soul, which I'm not completely out, to be completely honest. But I think that the loss of my dad and then the awareness that my dreams actually are not silly and that I do have messages through dreams just made my spiritual connection much deeper. And even my connection with my dad got deeper, more meaningful. And since then, he's been very present, guiding me, especially when I'm very down. But he's always with me and he's guiding me toward my true soul calling. And he gave me courage and confidence to finally, I wouldn't say discover my soul calling, because I know my soul already knew about it, but to actually embody it and live it, which is guiding women, especially mothers, on their own self-healing journeys. Because I believe that we all have the power within us to heal and to transform ourselves and ultimately to impact the future generations. I believe I am a cycle breaker. It's been a very long journey, but coming from childhood abuse and becoming the person that I am today and raising 3 wonderful children with whom I have such deep connection, and that reminds me every day that I'm creating a family that's so, and the home environment that is so different from what I had. It's just so heartwarming. And I want that for other people as well. I want other women to break the cycle and to make the future generations, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, have a better future that doesn't have to be like the life they had. And so for over a year now, I have dedicated myself on this soul journey and actually following what lights me up. And I have been helping women to connect with their soul and their calling in various different containers. And so the idea of creating the Soulcery podcast was born of this yearning to have more intimate conversations and connect with more women on the same journey. And in a way of creating a safe space for conversations that other platforms don't seem to have the capacity to hold. To come in circle per se every week and just share wisdom, share stories, share experiences, just like our ancestors used to do. Women back then, they used to gather to share wisdom, to heal each other, to empower each other. And that's what I envision with this container that is the Soulcery podcast. And I would like that this podcast that was born with this yearning of speaking up my truth and connecting with people on a deeper level and sharing our vulnerabilities. I wanted to believe that this podcast is your sanctuary, that it is a sacred space where we together can uncover the hidden gems of spirituality. And the aim here is to help you feel more connected, to help you feel more enlightened and seen. I wanted to feel seen, to feel understood, to feel that you're not alone. And so every week I will bring educational and inspirational content that challenges your thoughts, that disrupts your beliefs, and that addresses some common misconceptions about spirituality and about healing and self-healing. And occasionally, some episodes will be conversations with fellow soul sisters that are on the same journey as we are, so they can share their own experience and their wisdom with you and inspire you. And at the end of each episode, we dive deep into a soul inquiry based on my own trust journaling deck that I launched last year. And the intention is that these soulful exercises will encourage self-reflection and guide you on a path of self-discovery. So if you're ready to awaken your soul, to deepen your spiritual connection, and leave a positive footprint in this world, I would like to invite you to join the Soulcery podcast every week. I'd like to invite you to tune in each week for an enlightening and uplifting experience that hopefully will empower you to live a more soulful life. And please feel free to subscribe so that you are notified every week of each new episode that comes out. So thank you so much for listening to my life story, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Soulcery podcast and for holding space for this conversation. It is truly magical to be able to walk with you on this journey of soul healing and inner transformation. If you resonated with this episode and found it valuable, I would be grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes. Your feedback helps me reach more souls searching for guidance and healing. For more guidance and soul wisdom to support soul awakening women through the journey of alchemy, please visit my website www.ligiacosta.co.uk. Love and healing to all. See you on the next one.